I test rode the CFMoto 450 SS, which is called SR elsewhere, and compared it head to head with the Ninja 400 and the Yamaha R3, which would be its main rivals, especially here in the US. Riding them back to back allowed me to compare ride quality, acceleration, and feel in addition to specs and equipment that I typically compare in my videos. Like most people unsure of unknown Chinese brands, I was initially reluctant to give it a try, but I'm glad I rode it and found some really interesting things that I was not expecting at all. First off, looks. The Ninja 400 and the Yamaha R3 are already very good looking motorcycles, but CFMoto pulled off this gorgeous design thanks to their design director who used to work for Ducati and MV Agusta that make some of the most beautiful motorcycles in modern times. The fit and finish is surprisingly comparable to the Yamaha R3, which in my opinion has slightly better fit and finish compared to the Ninja 400. I especially love the winglets that may not be as functional as they claim but look pretty darn cool. Like the Ninja 400 and the R3, the 450 SS or SR also has a twin cylinder engine, but the exhaust note is a lot cooler. Take a listen. It almost sounds like an R7, and that's because the 450 SS is the only motorcycle in this class that has a cross-plane twin. The 450cc 270-degree parallel twin engine makes more power and torque than both the Ninja 400 and the R3. The 6-speed manual transmission also has a slipper clutch, which the R3 does not. Being a Japanese sport bike fan all my life, I was not expecting it to ride the way it did. It pulled just as hard as the Ninja 400, and sometimes I felt it did better than the Ninja. The three things that stood out during the test rides were: number one, the transmission is butter smooth. The shifter felt comparable to the R3 shifter, which I really like. The Ninja 400 transmission is also pretty decent, but the 450 SS just has a lighter clutch pull, and the shifter can actually be switched from standard shift to GP shift if you wanted to take it racing. You could do that to the Ninja and the R3 as well, but it's not a standard feature on either. None of the three motorcycles have a quick shifter as standard, but for the Kawasaki and Yamaha, you do have optional upgrades available, which is not the case with CFMoto at the time of making this video. The second thing that stood out during the test ride was how good the brakes were on the CFMoto 450 SS. Since I've been riding a super sport at the track with Brembo brakes, steel braided lines, and race brake pads, I've become very critical of brakes on street motorcycles at a test ride. The bite and feel that CFMoto 450 SS brakes had were not what I was expecting from a Chinese motorcycle, let alone a 450cc motorcycle. And don't get me wrong, the Ninja 400 or the R3 brakes are not bad. It's just the 4-piston Brembos on the 450 SS make their presence felt. And the third thing that was a pleasant realization was how light and nimble it felt. I looked up its weight and it actually weighs the same as the Ninja, which is 5 pounds lighter than the R3. So I started thinking, how is a Chinese motorcycle winning over the Japanese motorcycles that I have loved for years? This can't be. So I started nitpicking. The seat height is taller than both, although on paper it's only 10 millimeters taller than the Ninja 400. I was able to flatfoot the Ninja and the R3 being 5'8". Oh, and I am nitpicking because my personal road bike is an inch taller than the 450 SS and my track bike is 2 inches taller. So does it not have any real chinks in its armor? Oh yes, it does. Not one, but 3 that I will talk about in a few minutes. But every time I tried not to like it, it threw something mind-boggling in my face, like adjustable clutch and brake levers at this price point, and good quality ones at that. The TFT display that can integrate with your phone and a helmet Bluetooth communication system, show you navigation, control music on your phone with the switchgear, and has a USB charging socket. And it also has kill switch status and kickstand indicators on the dash, which is a pretty neat feature that I have not seen on motorcycles that cost twice as much. The Ninja dash has not been updated in years, but I do like how it's laid out, probably because I have the same dash on my ZX6R. R3 dash is reasonably sized but still not updated enough. In fact, the only electronic rider aid that the Ninja and the R3 get is ABS. CFMoto also has the audacity to give you frame sliders as standard, by the way. They may not be the most protective, but at least they're there. All three bikes have twin LED head and tail lamps, but the ones on CFMoto 450SS just look a lot cooler and are animated. They do this on startup. But then I started thinking, all this flashy stuff is good and attractive, but is there really something in the equipment that I do not like? And then I found the first thing. The suspension felt a bit too stiff for street riding, although my hunch is that it could be because of too much preload in the rear shock, which I did not get the opportunity to adjust during the test ride. The preload in the rear monoshock is the only adjustability all three bikes get. The front suspension is not adjustable on all, but the R3 and the 450SS get upside down forks from KYB. The show-off forks on the Ninja 400 are right side up, but they are thicker than both, so they're just as good for cornering stability and feedback. So based on my test rides, the Ninja 400 felt like it had the most versatile suspension for both street and sporty riding. The R3 is a little more closer to the track, and the 450SS felt like the most sport-oriented suspension. Another thing that I wasn't sure about was what brand of tires these were. I've never heard of CST Adreno HS AS5 tires, but I will be honest, they sure did feel planted and had a decent grip on regular street stuff and some leaning stuff that I did manage to pull off here and there. I'm not a fan of the stock Dunlops on the Ninja or the R3. These unknown brand tires actually felt surprisingly better than those. And before I start talking about the elephant in the room called reliability, let me first talk about the cost of ownership that includes fuel efficiency, service intervals, and price. So I was flogging all three bikes to see what they could do in terms of acceleration, braking, suspension, and their general ability to handle me. So my fuel efficiency figures don't exactly count. Owners on the internet have claimed high 40s to mid 50s US MPG with the Ninja. Thanks to a smaller, more fuel efficient engine, the R3 gets the best fuel efficiency of all. Owners who have been riding the 450SR in the UK and the Philippines for a little while seem to get high 50s when I convert metric to US MPG. Both the 450 and the 400 could touch 200 miles by the time they run dry. The R3 may go a few more miles. But when it comes to periodic maintenance, the Ninja 400 has the longest interval for regular service like oil change and everything else that comes with it, and the CFMoto requires the most frequent service interval, at least here in the US. The R3 regular service interval seems to be more frequent in the US than it is for the UK and Australia for some reason, but the major service, which is typically the most expensive one, requiring valve clearance check, is the longest for the R3 and the most frequent for the Ninja, and thankfully it seems to be consistent across the three countries from what I could gather on the internet. If you have first-hand information that's different, please let others know in the comments below. Interestingly, the CFMoto 450SS is priced very competitively here in the US. In the UK, they have ventured to price it higher than both. The warranty period, however, is twice as long. In Australia, they are priced lower than both Japanese bikes, with a warranty period that is less than the UK and more than the US. And therefore, this is a perfect time to talk about reliability. Relative to the Ninja 400 and the R3 that have thousands of users use and share their perception and experience with their reliability, CFMoto does not have enough user data points just yet. CFMoto motorcycles have been around for a while in Australia, Philippines, and UK, among the most prominent countries that watch my videos outside of the US, and my audiences in those countries have often pointed out that I should include CFMoto motorcycles in my comparison videos. Now, having ridden two CFMoto motorcycles, spoken to their US officials at Daytona Bike Week, and researched some forums and ownership reviews in the UK, Australia, and Philippines, I do feel like CFMoto may deserve a chance. However, I'm not done with my objections yet. Another challenge that CFMoto owners will have to face in the US and maybe some other countries is the availability of aftermarket parts. For example, SC Project is among the few known companies that make an aftermarket exhaust for it that may be easily available in the US. Parts availability seem to be better in some Asian countries at the moment. So until the supply chain catches up here in the US, importing aftermarket parts from other countries would be the only available option for CFMoto early adopters here in the US. If you want to watch owner reviews and longer test ride videos, I will link below the ones that I watched. And before we go to the next challenge that 450SS will face race in the US. Let me tell you why this Liquid IV box has been on the screen all this while. I have been using Liquid IV for about 2 years to stay hydrated at the racetrack, on the street, or when I'm shooting and test riding motorcycles in Florida heat all day. And even though this video is not exactly sponsored by Liquid IV, I genuinely and highly recommend that you try it. You can use my affiliate link below and get 20% discount and free shipping. In the process, you will also be supporting the channel as I will get a small commission. And now the final challenge that CFMoto 450SS owners will face a lot more than Ninja 400 and R3 owners. Resale value. While I could see the logic and convince myself that just because it's made in China does not necessarily mean it will fail. But then I do suspect that it would be harder to sell a used CFMoto motorcycle because now you have to convince others about all the things that you believed and experienced. The solution, however, to all three objections is only one: time. It will take time for enough people to own and confirm if indeed they are reliable or not. It will take time for aftermarket support to be enough that you could get most parts that you want to upgrade. And it will take time before they do build enough reputation of reliability that you don't have to convince the next buyer about reliability. I do want to thank Kawasaki USA and CFMoto USA for letting me test ride their motorcycles back to back, and my dear friend Maria for letting me test ride her beloved R3. You can watch this video where I compared the Ninja 400, the Yamaha R3, the RC390, and 3 other motorcycles. This is for us, helping the rider community one video at a time.